Salute to Hollywood and lost salute to Jason Lee. I don't know if y'all heard about this. Um, and again, I keep bringing topics like this. People are gonna think, oh, "Dang, you're trying to dive into political content." But no, I just am always interested to hear y'all thoughts on some of these things that are political adjacent. But I don't really care about like who's saying it. Some guy down the street could have said this, and I probably would have still bought the topic. Anyway, so headline: President Donald Trump, the literal president of the United States at this time, demands sports teams immediately make their teams. Technically, he didn't say this part, but this is make their names racist again. Tells the Washington whatevers, referring to the Commanders, to switch
That's
back to the
crazy editorialization.
to switch back to Redskins from Commanders, and the Cleveland Guardians to revert to the Indians. So let's just go to what they actually said, so we get the context. You never want to misquote people. So, via True Social, no, not True Social. I think that's the Truth. I think this is the platform that Trump posts on. So, he said, the Washington Whatevers should immediately change their name back to the Washington Redskins football team. There was a big clamoring for this. Likewise, the Cleveland Indians, one of the 6 original baseball teams with a storied past, are great Indian people in massive numbers who want this to happen. Their heritage and prestige is systematically being taken away from them. Times are different now than they were 3 years or 4 years ago. We are a country of passion and common sense. Owners, get it done. I don't have a good. I'm not good at mocking or imitating anybody. So if you're looking for a Donald Trump interpretation of this, pardon me, that wasn't happening. So I think we have maybe vaguely in the past come on here and talk about the fact that I think we've been podcasting long enough for. I think I remember when the Washington Commanders changed their name, and for a while they were like the Washington Football Team or something like that. I don't remember. I don't know if any of y'all follow baseball enough. I don't remember when the Indians changed to the Guardians, but same thing. So, um, so yeah, that's basically the whole TLDR. On Sunday, July 20th, Trump took the social media platform True Social, so what True Social, and urged the owners of football team Washington Commanders and the baseball team Cleveland Guardians to switch back to the. I keep loading offensive and like other things onto this thing. Like I'm just saying that's up to interpretation. All right. In back to their names. In 2020, the Redskins responded to the economic pressure to change its name and logo after George Floyd protests. And this is why I would. This wasn't my direct question, but this is why a part of this is strange for me because I vaguely remember it being around that time. And if you remember the 2020 era, there was a lot of outcries for social justice. But what is the Washington? What's the Washington team named after Native Americans have to do with George Floyd?
It was it was being requested that it be changed for a while, as in years.
Yeah, that's what
But
I remember.
I think the real correlation to the George Floyd protests wasn't more so the name. It was we got to do something to appease people because there's a lot of civil unrest. So in lieu of actually changing something, we're going to change this. We're going to make this move to make people happy in lieu of addressing any other actual significant issues. So it was more so like, you've been asking for it forever. We're going to give this to you because you're complaining about this other thing.
Got it. Thanks for that context, Ghost. I think something else comes to mind in this post. Scroll over, Ace. So that was the thing in 2020. That was the Cleveland Indians changing their name. That was the Redskins thinking about changing their name. was there? Okay, so this was also interesting. So the DC Mayor Muriel Bowser calls for Washington Redskins to change name. It's past time. So there was also at this time like political pressure because the little mayor was saying, "Hey, we need to change this." I thought this did this post have a video? I was watching a video somewhere of someone talking about it at the time, but the moral of the story is, I think we all remember the fact that there was once upon a time where there was some, I guess you could say, pressure to change these names. So it's interesting that now that we're saying, hey, change it back. Um, but all in all, it's outside of like the loading of social justice pressure and or the opposite of like wanting 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 things to remain the same because you're low key like a bigot. um, what do y'all think of this in the sense of do y'all think there's like an objective and we always gotta be mindful when we talk about is there something objective here? You think there's an objective um not consensus opinion is also not I'm lost for words today an objective stance that can be gleaned from this in the sense that you think an argument can be made why names should remain the same for like historical relevance or historical sake, or do you think there are legitimately something from the past that because of their origin story really don't serve us depending on where depending on where society has reached. Curious to know if you guys think it can come down to that. Or you think it's just wholly going to be opinion based, or what side of the field you stand on? No pun intended. Definitely curious to know what your thoughts on this are, Ghost. What do you think?
Uh, I think, well, my actual take is that I find it kind of ridiculous that this is a national talking point because there's so much more that's important than talking about sports teams' names.
There's a lot going
However,
on.
in the context of your like general question, even outside of sports, this has become a thing with the very recently. I don't know if y'all were aware, but Trump made some declaration that they're changing military base names back to their original names, and one of them that was changed, was just controversial, was the Robert E. Lee something military base
Yeah.
that they now claim is a different Lee, but it's kind of like in that same vein. I think in general, there's a lot more that's important to be worrying about this country needs to be worrying about, I should say, than names of things that don't have any actual impact on anything really. There is some level of power in the way things are presented, like the Indians slash Redskins. I I was under the impression that Native Americans were found those terms and the logos specifically to be somewhat offensive, like parody images, specifically like the Indians one. Like there was a whole load of blackface images like way back in the 50s and 60s that have kind of gone out of I don't say gone out of style, but they're not prevalent today because again they're very offensive and it's nobody wants. Well, I shouldn't. Black people do not want to see that around because it's like it reinforces negative stereotypes that aren't even true most of the time. So I think if there's pressure coming from the actual people being impacted by these things and harming their the perception of how they're looked at, and I particularly like kids. Like if your kid's Native American, you see that logo and it's always like, oh, is that what I am? It's like that's where I think the harm comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So if pressure is coming from the actual affected people to change things, I think that is the biggest justification. Also, like, if it would change, if talking about like a few years ago, like the statues that were being torn down, and it's like no one wants to see the names of old slave masters being paraded around like they were great people. So I definitely understand the rationale behind not wanting to see it, but beyond that, I think that if it's not actually hurting anyone, if no one's paying attention, then again, there's a lot more important things to worry about. Like you can make arguments like, oh, it's subconsciously reinforcing the these certain negative traits of the way people are looked at. Like white people will see a Robert E. Lee, or certain, I don't want to just say blanket white people, a certain type of white people see a Robert E. Lee statue and subconsciously think, wow, this is a great guy. This is someone to emulate. What are his ideals? Oh, he was racist as fuck. Interesting. You can go down that rabbit hole, but I just I feel like there's a lot that is wrong with this country and that was wrong from the inception, and you're not going to be able to change everything just by changing the names that are being applied to stuff. But again, if the actual people being portrayed have issues with certain things, then that's the biggest reason to say, yeah, okay, change this up.
Yeah, I think that last point is what most people can get behind, which almost makes me would have preferred that people like organization platform reporting this, like they did get insight to what like I guess in this case like Native Americans specifically thought about it instead of just talking about
Yeah,
like
I've seen like different
yeah
articles where there's a lot of Native Americans that took offense to these, but of course Trump is saying that people have been clamoring for them to change it. And I think the funniest thing was when he said that their culture was being taken from them. Like
yeah.
that's such a incredibly tone deaf and ridiculous statement. It's like
There's a lot that
who
was
took the
taken from
culture?
people, a lot more than just quote unquote culture. But yeah, no, you brought up a lot of excellent points, and then like I think one of like you said one of the biggest things is like the representations of like and depictions, caricatures you could say of people. Like we've over time we just got rid of that stuff. Like we don't depict black and brown folks how they used to. Same with Asian folks. Like you don't see those depictions in media. So it kind of just makes sense that some of the these logos really starts to go in some of these names. And you know what's interesting about the statues? I forgot if we talked about that on the podcast before, but I could almost sooner get behind like if you just want to stand by like the historical significance of something. I can sooner understand you keeping a statue around. Again, you know, every place has the right to take down things and have things that they will or they want. But I can sooner understand that. But as it pertains to like when you have a little sports team and they have to keep up marketing and merchandising. Like, if you have like a out of date depiction of somebody or some bodies, and you're still marketing, you're still putting it on jerseys, sports memorabilia. That's it's kind of hard to make the case that okay, we're just doing this for the sake of like the historical relevance. I mean, like
Yeah, that's a good
it
point.
starts holding less water. In my opinion. But what about you, Ace? What do you think of this controversy? Do you think you can get to an objective point of view of whether it should stay or go, or do you think it's all opinion based?
Oh, um, I mean, at the end of the day, it pretty much is all opinion based. Like Ghost said, it should be based, in my mind, on the opinion of the people that are um, being represented or misrepresented by whatever the icons or whatever it is, name, etc. Um, I mean, you could say, well, that's difficult to come to a consensus on, but
I mean,
I feel like
I
you
think
could
you
try.
I think
figure it out.
you could definitely get to what people largely agree on.
Yeah, yeah. Um, other thing I was gonna say too is like I'm trying to put myself in the position of, okay, what if this happened to me where like I had a team, like a sports, whatever, or in a sport league or whatever, and my team was named like the Samurai, and then and then I find that Japanese people having an issue with me calling our team the Samurai. I'll change the name. Like, what is the? I don't get why this is such a big deal, man. Like, it's it's just. It seems to me it's just it's purposeful lack of empathy for people who, I mean, clearly have been complaining about this for a long time. You could try to distort it and say, well, XYZ group are just using it for their own agenda, but I don't feel like that's the case. That this wasn't something that Native Americans were offended by, particularly because we don't call Native Americans Indian anymore because that was something that they were offended by. So, like, it seems clear to me that that would probably be something they would want changed. So, um,
We definitely don't. I definitely don't think we're going around calling people Redskins either.
seriously, like, so yeah. I mean, it just seems like a clear and purposeful lack of empathy for another group. I
to,
can't really see
to
it
that
any
point
other
you just
way.
raised, and my apologies, I thought there was a video attached to this post, or maybe I just imagined it, where like somebody was like, it was sister like making the case for why the team should change. Maybe it was his mayor, and I mean I saw it somewhere else, but what you just said, like if you have a team that's based off something from a culture or a nationality or ethnic group, and they want it changed, I think we can all get on board about okay, it might make sense to change that. But what if the outcry was coming from not that group? Because again, I understand the context to what Ghost was saying before, but I'm mad. Maybe my memory is failing me, but like maybe I guess it was the case that around that time where there was like a lot of social unrest and protests and stuff, like there was a general call for like things to become more progressive.
Mhm.
And that could have also fed into like how we get to the point where like in general people are calling for that. I guess to ask, do you think it would have made sense, or to your hypothetical, do you think it would make sense to change a name if people that are outside of that group are calling for that change?
Um, I guess it could depend in a way. Like, if the other group has a point, like in general, people find these things to be offensive, and that's just kind of like common knowledge that or yeah, yeah, that you're maybe like unaware of or whatever, then it could still hold water. Um, I'm putting myself back in the position of having like a team called the Samurai, and
Yeah,
then some
what if it
random
was
other group.
yeah, what if it was black and brown folks or Hispanic folks saying, "Hey, we what? That's offensive."
Y- yeah, I,
Getting offended for somebody else.
I'm gonna need to see some proof that it's actually
yeah,
offensive.
exactly. Like I'm not just gonna be like, oh, well, you said it, so I guess I gotta change it. I
What do you
mean,
mean? They would just say
it
like,
would.
"This is out. This is a dated view of Japanese people. They're not all samurais and ninjas. They're definitely ninjas."
That's not good enough. I mean, yeah, sure, Japanese people aren't samurai anymore, but that doesn't mean it didn't that class did not exist historically, and um that's that like that argument in and of itself doesn't hold water. It would be more so, do Japanese people find either the portrayal of Japanese people as samurai, or like the use of the term samurai or something like about that in and of itself offensive, or like or I mean, you could even go the cultural appropriation route, but um if there's nothing in those terms, then I think the argument holds less water.
Yeah, I think in general it's going to be hard to get behind making a change to something that's this large in scope, if unless like you're hearing direct concerns from that particular group.
Yeah,
Um,
and Trump's rationale is that is exactly what you're saying, is that he's claiming that it's because of liberals saying that it needs to be changed, but the actual people weren't saying it, which again I find doubtful, but I haven't done the full research on it.
yeah,
However, I think like at the end of the day, the most important thing about this is like it's already changed. Why are we going to change it back?
Right,
yeah.
right, right, right.
It costs the companies, especially of this size, so much like hard work and like time and money to do these type of things. Where changing something that's even if even if even if a logo's been around for like a couple of years, like the whole marketing, all the
Yep.
merchandise, yeah, it's not an easy thing to just change, and especially for the sake of this type of rationale. Um, there was one other point. I don't want to say do you agree with my logic, but do you think, Ace, there are instances in which it does make sense to leave things for historical reference? Like if there was like a castle where there used to be some they used to stone people, like Salem witch shit. Should they get rid of that? Because back then people were being bigots or witch.
No, I don't think so. I
Were they being
think
witch bigots? Why were they on that Salem witch stuff again?
yeah, they thought. I mean, I
Any
shouldn't say they thought everybody was witches, but I think the general consensus at this point is that they were using, um, they were like accusing people of being witches as like ways to either, I feel like it was either um, suppress things that women were saying about like men of the society at the time,
yeah.
um, in terms of
Okay.
like
Okay, so harsher example. What if there was
things
like
like that.
a random like gallow or like noose that was like a famous one in like
Yeah,
in like downtown
yeah,
Mississippi or something like that.
there's definitely like there's definitely there's definitely things that I think would be inappropriate. And you can't, I don't know how you would necessarily define what would versus wouldn't be appropriate, but it's like a gallows, I mean not even a gallows, like a noose very specifically, I feel like for probably most black people is going to conjure up some very difficult um uh that's going to be a very challenging thing to see, very difficult thing to see, and like confronting the knowledge of the history of both slavery and and just like white supremacy and suppression of black people, things like this, like uh confronting that alone, the knowledge alone is like difficult enough, let
Yeah,
alone
that's actually facts.
seeing, yeah, seeing that in like the physical world. I think that would probably be going over the line. um we have the historical images, if I think that's as far as I think most black people in particular would be comfortable with going. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, how you draw that line, it probably does come back to like getting a consensus of the people that were affected.
yeah. And to that point, what you call it? Some people would make the case, and I think largely in societies we do this, of in the sense of like a lot of that stuff, instead of just having it, out in the open, it serves its purpose like in museums and stuff.
Mm.
Um, like I think it's interesting. We've experienced it. If you go to that Black African American Circle Museum, I forget the
Yeah,
exact
yeah.
location in Atlanta. You get some real imagery and experiences of like what it was like
Yep.
in the time in America when obviously black and brown people did not get a fair shake.
Yeah, yeah, and that was like just Jim Crow. That wasn't even like slavery.
Exactly. But all the same, I don't know who to salute here. What was the Commanders' record last season? Have they been good since they switched to Commanders? That would be the only funny thing.
Well,
If they,
they've been good, but it's been because they got rid of their owner, Dan Snyder, who was a alleged racist. So do with that information what you will.
Jesus, when it rains, it pours. That would be the only. That would be that, if their records started to tank after they switched the name. That's what Trump could have came in and said. Ever since they changed their name, their record has been terrible. Switch it
Now,
back.
you know what's funny is I think both teams have been way better than they have been recently since they changed the names. Both of them.
I don't want to. That didn't shock me. All the same, like I said, I don't know who to salute here, but the moral of the story is, you know, what's crazy. I guess you could make the case that, in the same vein of like, sometimes people get offended for other people, like they can make the case he's like, I guess you wouldn't say getting offended for other people, but again, it gets back to like we got a lot bigger fish to fry. Why are we worrying about some names of some teams? Like,
This is distractions, bro. This he announced this shit right after the Epstein shit, or in the midst of the Epstein controversy. Get people talking about some other random bullshit like this that's stupid, and people say this is stupid, meanwhile ignoring the fact that bro had a first class flight to Pedo Island.
all
And
right, I can't get too political,
too late.
but all the same, yeah, definitely don't go around getting offended for other people, and don't let this distract you from the fact that we got a lot going on. But unless there's anything else, we can move on to the next topic.